right, moment you've all been waiting for. We get to welcome our very own, we are so lucky to have Darrel Ray. That's actually a part of our community. I feel like it's kind of exciting to have someone who's so well known and well respected. You know Dr. Darrel Ray, he's been a psychologist for over 30 years. He's author of 4 books, 2 of those are here today. They are really great, and he's going to share some more really wonderful wisdom with us. And so let's just go ahead and welcome up Dr. Darrel Ray.
I've been under the weather a little bit this week, so my voice is a little shaky if I start whispering. I'm sorry, that's just the way it works. So I'll try to whisper as loud as I can. So I was having a conversation with Julia back there, and she was telling me she tries hard to stay out of trouble. And I told her, don't try too hard, because it won't do you any good, is what we're going to learn from the Duggars today. So this is the Duggar family, in case you hadn't been living under a rock or just came in from some country that didn't have any television in it, and you don't watch reality TV. Today we're going to look at the belief structure of the Duggars, and we're going to talk about how their beliefs impact their sexuality. And we're going to try to look at what it teaches us about our sexuality. I lied a little bit here. I really don't think the Duggars can teach us shit about sexuality. But anyway, it's an interesting title. And I wanted to change it, but Helen wouldn't let me, so well, it's only half true. So anyway, beliefs really do impact our perceptions and our behavior profoundly. And if you don't believe me, how many of you, when you deconverted from religion, had a profound change in your perceptions of the world around you? Look at that, just look around you. Beliefs have incredibly powerful impacts on us. And I imagine very, very few of you come even a fraction as close to the Duggars as the Duggars do. Your belief structure was not nearly as embedded. Your God virus was not nearly as deeply infected, maybe as... Now, I'm not saying not everybody, but most of you probably have nothing like what the Duggars had. So what do the Duggars believe? Well, their theology is very close to the quiverful. How many of you are familiar with the quiverful movement? Okay, you know. And you're familiar with No Longer Quivering, our very own Vicki Garrison, who helps people getting out of the quiverful movement. And the quiverful movement has the notion that the only purpose of sex, or the primary by far purpose of sex, is for reproduction. And that sex education promotes sin. That's really a big belief of theirs. In fact, that sex education causes all sorts of problems, according to Jim Bob Duggar. I had the hardest time saying that name, Jim Bob Duggar. Just sounds like somebody that comes out of a reality TV show from the South or something. Birth control is sinful, and it actually promotes sinful sex. So this is just some background information. What do they believe? Well, they believe that sexual restriction is really important, and that female sexual sin is far greater than male sexual sin. Now, they will never tell you that, but watch their behavior. As a psychologist, I learned a hell of a long time ago, don't listen to what people say. Watch their behavior. Their behavior tells you what they believe. This is really hard for the average person to get in their head. In fact, I could come back and do a whole talk on that alone, I think. Stop listening to what people say most of the time, and watch what they do. And then predict their behavior based upon that. And you can do that really well with the Duggars. They have a theory of human behavior that's based on a biblical psychology. And yes, it is a psychology. It may not be scientific, but it is a psychology. Psychology that Satan exists, that there's hell, that there's angels and devils working and battling inside of you, and that the Holy Spirit can infect you. All these things are real to them. Just like they were real to many of you. How many of you believed that stuff when you were a Christian or a religionist at one point in time? Yes, you probably a fifth of the people in here had that strong belief. And it flavored, it colored your perceptions of the world. And that's what's going on with the Duggars. Eternal damnation is really a big part of their worldview. And sexual purity, I'm going to come back and talk about this. Sexual purity is the ticket to get in the club. We'll come back and talk about the club concept. And last but certainly not least, males own females. Now again, they would never say that, but watch the behavior. How are the females treated within family structure. They're certainly second-class citizens. So let's get on to talk about the guy that's been in the news media the most, and that's good old Josh Duggar, who was the executive director of the Family Research Council until on May 21st of this year. He resigned when they found out that when it broke, that he had molested 5 different girls at one point in his adolescence. Prosecution wasn't possible because statute of limitations had lapsed. And, they were just about to get over that crisis when it broke again that poor Josh had gotten paid to have a paid account on Ashley Madison. Now, how many of you know what Ashley Madison is? Of course, nobody knew what Ashley Madison was 3 months ago. Well, some of you guys did, but most of us didn't know what Ashley Madison was. Well, I'll say that. It's not true. I knew damn good well what Ashley Madison was. And it was obvious. It was so obvious that it was a scam. I know. I got online and created an account just to see what was going on there. Yes, it was research. It was definitely research. But Josh Duggar had an account. I think he had 2 accounts on Ashley Madison. He had accounts on other dating sites. And this guy was married and preaching, like abstinence only for kids, and that marriage has to be sacred and all that sort of stuff. And he's opposed to same-sex marriage of all kinds. And we find out that he's frequenting strip clubs. And he meets a porn star at one of the strip clubs. And, whoa, what happened? Oh, yeah, and this is her. Patricia Dillon. I'm guessing that's not her real name. But anyway, this is who he did sleep with her. She's got some stories about what happened there. Whether they're true or not, I don't know. But she's got probably got some good publicity and viewers for her porn channel as a result of that. So she could thank Josh Duggar for helping her in her career. So we get all these things happening very, very quickly. And you got to ask, if it's not working for them, why do they keep doing it? What's going on here? And we see over and over again as in this process that what appears to be hypocrisy is really not hypocrisy. How many of you said out of your own mouth, or seen it, or heard it, well, those folks are just a bunch of hypocrites? We do. A lot of us look at and say, they're a bunch of hypocrites. Well, let me clue you in here. There's no such thing as hypocrisy here. They don't really see it. They don't believe it. What they see and believe is you've done something that got you temporarily suspended from the club. That's what happened to Ted Haggard. Ted Haggard had sex with a male prostitute, even as he's preaching against same-sex marriage and other things, and preaching for abstinence only. He gets caught with a prostitute. He gets kicked out of the club for only a couple of years. Ted Haggard's back. He's back there in Colorado Springs, and he's got a big church going. He started a church in a barn. And first week, the very first week they announced the service, it was too big. Now, isn't that crazy? All those people came back to take Haggard. He's not a hypocrite. He just needed to get his forgiveness ticket punched. That's all you have to do. If you're a Christian, you just got to get Jesus to forgive you, and you get back in the club. And you see it over and over again in the process. So really, to think that this is hypocrisy is to misunderstand what's going on in this community. They're not hypocrites. They have just fallen out of grace. And you can always get back into grace if you get your forgiveness ticket punched. Now, you have to do different things to get your ticket to get back in. And some people have a harder time getting back in. But the more powerful you are, probably the easier it is or the quicker you're going to get back. It didn't take Ted Haggard very long. He tried selling insurance. He wasn't very good at that. I was surprised. I thought he'd probably do that pretty well. So here's a whole network of abuse that's going on around the Duggars. I mean, we've got Jim, Bob, and Michelle here. It's kind of the center with 19 kids and counting. And then we've got Josh Duggar, who abuses his sisters and another woman who wasn't inside the family. And the family sends him off to J.T. Hutchins, who is his sex addiction counselor. And J.T. Hutchins was arrested and is now serving 56 years in prison for child molestation and porn charges. He was Josh Duggar's sex addiction counselor. But sex addiction included building 2 houses. And this guy's qualifications are, he's a retired Arkansas State Trooper. That's his qualifications. See, you only have to be inspired by the Holy Spirit in order to be a sex addiction counselor. If any of you listen to my podcast, this very week, I put a letter, a very heavily edited letter, by the way. I read it from a former sex addiction counselor, Christian sex addiction counselor, and he's telling us what it's like to be a sex addiction counselor from the inside. Now, he's not a sex addiction counselor anymore, but if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. It's really, really revealing what's going on, and not one of these people had any qualifications. And then, of course, let's go back here. We've got Doug Phillips from Vision Forum. Vision Forum was an enormously important organization in the evangelical movement, and the head of that was Doug Phillips, and he was a very close associate of Michelle and Jim Bob, but he had a long-term relationship with his nanny, and he finally got caught. He promised her many, many times he would marry her. He gave her all sorts of money and gifts and all sorts. And this was over like a 15-year time period. Well, that got found out, so he had to resign. And then, of course, we got Bill Gothard. Bill Gothard was the god of homeschooling and the Quiverful movement. Almost every homeschooling Christian family knows Bill Gothard and probably uses his materials. Very creationist material. Anybody get Bill Gothard's? Exposed to Bill Gothard's stuff? Okay. Just a few people. Well, Bill Gothard liked to molest young ladies who were interns in his organization. And this went on for at least a decade, probably longer. I don't remember how long it was. All these people are connected very closely to the Duggars. I mean, we just see they're all connected here. And this is just a fraction of the people. It's just a fraction of the problems that the Duggars have had. Like I said to Julia, don't try too hard, because you're going to get in trouble if you do, and that's what we see here. So, here's their beliefs about human sexuality. First, that you are born broken, that your body is your mortal enemy. This is a really important concept. Your body is your enemy. So they program you to think you're constantly in struggle with your body. Of course, they frame it as Satan's in your body. So, or some evil is in your body, or if you're a woman, it's just because you're a woman. Eve obviously made you evil to begin with, and that your desires and feelings are generally inspired by Satan or some external being that's having influence on you. After the afterlife is very dependent upon you being pure. Now, they don't go quite as far as the Mormons do and say, women, you can't really get into the afterlife unless you've got a man with you. That's kind of the way the Mormons look at it, slight exaggeration. But it's almost that close with the Duggars and with the Quiverful movement. Marriage is the highest form a woman can achieve. Don't go out and get a PhD in physics. Get married. That's a higher achievement than a PhD in physics. And, of course, males are superior to females. So I talked about psychology briefly early, but their beliefs, their psychology says that beliefs trump desire. You believe strong enough, that will control your desire. And that's a strong belief on their part. And it frames the whole way they look at sexuality, and look at their bodies, and look at other people's bodies. You just don't believe hard enough, that's why you can't resist porn. You just don't believe hard enough, that's why you went out and had sex with somebody who wasn't your wife. And they also believe that shame is God talking to you. God's telling you something when you feel shame. And guilt helps you know that you're actually broken. And you are broken. You're a Christian. And if you're a Christian, you're broken from the very beginning. That's the theology. Their behavior really does make a lot of sense. You and I sit around and think, this makes no sense. If you have the preacher having affair after affair and you keep letting him preach, how does that make sense? But it makes a lot of sense within their biblical psychology of grace and forgiveness. So you get your forgiveness ticket punched, you can get back in. The Christian parenting, another belief they have is that Christian parenting trumps biology. If you're just a really good parent, you will not have a homosexual child. If you're just a really good parent, your child will be obedient to you, and if he's not obedient to you, beat the shit out of him, and you will get better behavior out of your kid. And that's what the Duggars believe. And we'll come back and talk about it. Religion here, in this case, is based on boundary violations. And almost all the religions on the planet, especially the patriarchal ones, are believe in boundary violations enough. By that I mean there's a God in your head, or there's a God watching you, or there will be consequences from a God if you behave in a certain way. Even more so-called primitive religions that don't have the one God, monotheistic approach, still have those kinds of beliefs. Others can condemn you and others can judge you because they've been taught by the God what you should and shouldn't do. So there's lots of shooting on people. For those of you who are in my workshop, you know what I mean by that, right? All right. Yeah, I have a famous saying. Well, actually, I stole it from Albert Ellis. Don't shoot on people, it stinks. And don't shoot on yourself, it stinks on yourself too. Well, that's a whole other talk, Helen. Religionists have the right to snoop. How many of you had people snooping on you when you were a kid, or parents checking in on you? Are you really masturbating in there? I caught you with Playboys under your mattress. Guilty as charged, many times. And your body belongs to God, and your body belongs to your parents, and your body belongs to your minister, your body belongs to your spouse. Your body does not belong to you. It belongs to your Sunday school teacher. Your body belongs to whoever says you should or shouldn't do it, and they have the power to violate your boundaries and get inside your head and condemn you for thinking wrong thoughts or behaving in ways that are simply normal. Sexuality. So, here's a fact, and it's a fact that the Duggars haven't figured out yet, and probably never will. And that is that desire trumps belief. You just can't overcome your basic human biology. It's going to express itself one way or the other. But if you don't believe that you have a fundamental biology, that you have, or on the other hand, if you believe you have a fundamental evilness about you, then that's going to frame the way you treat your children, the way you treat your spouse, the way you treat marriage and sexuality and all those kinds of things. So I put my prognosticator hat on here, and I'm going to join take up the James Randi challenge, because I think I can win the $1 million challenge here. I'm going to make some predictions here, write these down, and I'd almost put money on the fact that every one of my predictions is going to come true within the next 10 years. I'll guarantee, well, certainly within the next 20 years, but within the next 10 years, statistically, at least 2 of the Duggar kids are going to turn out to be lesbian or gay. Is that accurate? You think that's a reasonable prediction? Okay. Almost all of them are going to be masturbating by the time they're 13. Any doubts there? Okay. By 18, most of them will have had premarital sex. And there's even some evidence the Duggars are doing that already. One of the sisters-in-law, who's in the same kind of cult, has been shunned by the family because she got pregnant. Shades of Bristol Palin here, who's out there preaching abstinence only even as she's had 2 children outside of marriage. I don't care if people have children outside of marriage, really, I don't give a shit. But if you're going to preach against it, I'd like you to practice it, or at least show us that it can be practiced. And she's a great example. But remember, she's still preaching against it because she got her forgiveness ticket punched. She can get back in the club. When you're really young, you can get back in the club easier. It takes a lot more when you're a little older, again, according to whether you're powerful or not in movement. I'm going to guess that more than Josh, more people in that family are violating boundaries of other people than simply Josh Duggar. And I don't know I don't know in what fashion, but I'm pretty darn sure. And shame and depression are probably coming, and it will show up clinically at one point in time, especially in the girls, because the girls bear the greatest burden of shame and guilt in the Duggar family, in the cult, in that particular approach to Christianity. So here's my view, and it actually is a sympathetic view. We've laughed a little bit and talked about it, but I have some sympathy and empathy for Josh Duggar and for his family. We have to understand they are infected with the God virus, if you're familiar with that term. The God virus, once it gets in your head, it really colors your perceptions of your world so deeply and profoundly that you really cannot see any alternative ways. So it causes them a lot of pain. Imagine you're a 15-year-old kid and you think this body that's developing and growing breasts or growing penis or whatever is your enemy. And you're condemned for life to have to fight this enemy. And you can't use birth control and now you're condemned to have as many children as you want without respect to what your finances are, how well you can support kids, if you're even emotionally stable enough to do it. I mean, there's lots of things that these people are going through. There is a lot of pain in the Duggar family. And I want to emphasize that. It's real easy to laugh at these people. It's a little bit harder to see just how much difficulty and pain, suffering is probably going on inside this family. And that then, of course, leads to abuse. It causes a lot of self-hate. It causes loathing of oneself. Growing up that way, hating your body, hating other people's bodies, having to judge other people and say, you're a slut, you're a horrible person, you had a child out of wedlock, so you can't ever be in the grace of God, and that sort of stuff is just rampant in that. And there's so much pain. It just tears me up to even think about it. There's a lot that we need to be empathic about with these folks. And of course, ultimately, the burden of all this comes right down on the women in this cult. And it is a cult, but even though whether it is or not, the process by which they're working their sexuality or expressing their sexuality pervades almost all of Christianity to some degree or another. It also pervades all of Hinduism. It pervades all of Islam. It's not unique to Christianity. We're just using that example here today. So what do the Duggars teach us? Well, that denying your sexual desires is going to probably cause more problems. We got examples by the dozens, don't we? That denying your sexuality often leads to unethical or even illegal behavior, and certainly self-abuse, self-loathing, self-hate. We've seen all that. But look at all the illegal behaviors. How many of you belong to the Freedom from Religion Foundation? Freedom from Religion. Oh, goodness, you guys need to join up here. I love them. They're a great organization. But the one thing I love the most is their newspaper that comes out every month. How many of you get that newspaper? Yeah, it's kind of an old-fashioned newsletter you get in the mail, and you open it up. The first thing I do, okay, what do you think the first thing I do is?
The black box.
I go to the black collar. Yeah, you open up the back and you'll get at least 100 examples in every single issue of some minister doing something illegal, generally sexually illegal, like raping young girls in the church or raping young boys. It's just at least 100 every single month. And that's just the illegal stuff. That's just the stuff they get caught with. So there's it's just a gigantic problem out there. And we often think, well, child abuse and that sort of stuff is only a problem with the Catholic Church. It's not. It's a problem throughout Christianity, throughout all patriarchal religion. So living according to a supernatural theory of sexuality gives you permission to violate other people's boundaries. We mentioned that earlier. And people take big advantage of that. Ministers take advantage of that. What do you hear when a minister grooms a young girl or a priest grooms a young boy? This is God's work. I'm God. I'm a representative of God. This is okay. That's what I just read this morning in one of the associates of Josh Duggar, how he groomed the nanny, saying, "We are destined to get married. When my wife dies, I will marry you." And he's doing this in the name of God. It's an interesting phenomenon. What it tells us is there's a lot of sexual acting out going on within these groups. Now, there's lots of sexual activity among our group, I'm pretty sure of that. But we don't classify it as acting out because it's not wrong to us. And we have an ethical standard, generally speaking, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So I want to just emphasize something. Josh Duggar has two sides. And he's just the current example. He has two sides. He has this external persona that he was throwing around as the executive director of the Family Research Council. And then he's got this inside. And he can't show the inside. The inside and the outside are separate. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to lie. It just takes a lot of energy to lie to me. I'm not saying I've never lied. I lied to my mother several times. And once I got caught. And the consequences, I didn't like. So what I learned early on was it takes a lot of energy to keep the truth and the lie balanced. Think about Josh Duggar. He's got this incredible lie. He's got inside himself, he's got this big apparent truth on the outside. It's a huge amount of energy and suffering that is caused by that. I do not condone his abuse of other people when he was a teenager. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I can understand what's going on inside this guy. Now, my suggestion is that we all have a little Josh Duggar inside of us. Would you like to come up and demonstrate, Dave? All of us have got it. And by that I mean we hide our inner selves and we deny our inner desires oftentimes. We fear that others might discover what we really think, what we really feel. You know, it's a big threat. I wouldn't want anybody to know that I masturbated. I wouldn't want anybody to know that I masturbate to pornography on my computer screen. You know, there's inner issues, there's behaviors that we engage in and thoughts that we have that scare the shit out of us, that make us ashamed. Where the hell did you get that notion? Why is that a shameful thing to do? Fear of others discovering us is probably one of the biggest things I've seen in among the atheist community. Is we've got this inner desire, inner thoughts, and we don't want to let anybody know what it is. Now, I think we're a hell of a lot better off than the Christians are, and I've got lots of evidence that we do. But it doesn't mean we've solved the problem, that we're over it all. I think we have a ways to go. Because I hear secular people judging other people. I hear slut shaming going on, especially on the internet. You just watch the atheist comments, and about every 10 things, there's going to be something come out that's slut shaming. And shaming women for being just women and for expressing themselves in ways that the patriarchy says is not appropriate. It's not as big a problem here as it would be in Christianity. Don't hear me saying that, but we still need to pay attention. We need to watch. We need to kind of help ourselves be better at respecting other people's sexuality. And of course, you saw me talk, or if you haven't, my male shame talk. There's a lot of male shame going on in our community, and there's males who feel shame they haven't expressed or addressed in their own psychology. So, if we have a little Josh Duggar in us, we may feel a bit of shame talking to our partners. I wouldn't want my partner knowing this or that about me. Or your partner finds out and you feel incredible shame about it. Well, there's a reason for that. You probably learned it somewhere else. Now, I'm not saying if you're out there doing illegal stuff, yeah, you probably should be ashamed of that. I want you to be ashamed if you're out there, because that's not ethical, that's not humanistic. That's not what Oasis is all about. We're about respect for other people's sexuality. If you feel guilt about your desire, that's probably a religious training going on. If you have an inability to even name your desire, and that's the big Duggar problem. If you can't name your desire and own it, it is going to get expressed somewhere else. And I'm not going to go into details, but if you read the details of Josh Duggar's encounter with the porn star, you will see that guy's got some inner desires that he expressed with her, at least according to her story. And it shows. He can't name that. He can't take ownership for it. And when you can't take ownership for an internal desire, then you cannot control it. You can't direct it in appropriate ways. I don't think we control as much as we direct and focus our sexual energy. I think that's a better way to look at it. Christians try to control it. Humanists try to direct it in appropriate ways that are respectful for other people. So if you have any of these things, you have self-hate, guilt, shame around your sexuality, those are all areas for us to look at. So is it religious, secular sexuality, or is it religious sexuality? The Duggar behavior, as I said earlier, makes sense within their framework, but it does not make sense within our framework. We cannot apply the Duggar standard to us if we're going to be humanists. So, secular sexuality has these concepts with it. First of all, you are born whole. You're not broken. Christians believe you're broken the minute you're born. Maybe the minute you're conceived. I don't know what they think. You have a right to your own bodily integrity. Nobody has a right over your body. You have the right to decide. I include, all sorts of things in that, including circumcision, both for males and females. I think we humanists need to be looking at bodily integrity in that broad spectrum, since a lot of that shit comes from religious training. We have a right to establish our own boundaries. We focus, and we as humanists focus on ethical sexual expression, and there's a lot in that word ethical. to explore and understand it. It means we need to really look at what it means to be sexual as a humanist. And we celebrate our sexuality, and we especially celebrate sexuality of other people too. The two together, you can't have one without the other. You can't celebrate your own if you're not celebrating the other person's as well. So, I'm going to give you, you can close your eyes if you don't want to see any porn here today. But just take a quick look at these. Do these trouble you, or do they turn you on? No need to tell me. Right now, anyway. Now, none of these may be your kinks. I don't know. I don't even know if you're kinky or not. I don't care. But if you're troubled by this, you have to ask yourself, what troubles me about it? Now, it took me quite a while to choose to find things that weren't. But I was also guaranteed this won't be shown on the podcast, right? Yeah. We're trying to get the curiosity up of the podcast listeners right now. So, yeah, you can tell me if you're turned on by neon later. All right, so the thing I like about Oasis is this is a safe place to ask questions and explore. And I love this notion that we can come here and we can say, here's what I'm thinking, what do you think? And we can explore ourselves and our sexuality. Or you can ask people, help me think about this. And we see this all the time. In fact, next week, we're going to have a talk on Black Lives Matter and race relations and stuff. That's a tough topic. Now, how many Christian churches are really dealing with that head on? Very, very few of them. And well, we can do that. And we had a relationship panel just a month and a half ago where people were talking about things that are very different. And we can ask those questions. And you can go ask those people and they'll be very open and kind and considerate. You can ask tough questions. You can even ask dumb questions. And most people, I think, in Oasis will respond and help you understand new ways of thinking and new ways of addressing your sexuality. So, I want to talk about how to take some steps to honor your desire. And I want you to think about those words. Honor your desire. And honor the desire of others. And then act on your desire in an ethical manner. You need to name your desire. Rather than let it sneak out as it does in Josh Duggar, name your desire, and only then can you direct your desire and focus your desire and be more in control of your desire. And if that means doing some experimentation with, I've always had this fantasy, but it scares me to death, try to own that and try to talk about it. Maybe with your partner, maybe with a psychologist, maybe with a psychotherapist or something, I don't care. But explore that part so that you can take ownership with it. Because that's when you become fully human. When you own what's going on inside of you. And we all have fantasies. And we all have fantasies that we better not act on. But there's nothing wrong with having fantasy. We don't have any thought police. We don't have any gods running around telling us what we can and can't think. So thinking something is not a crime. It may be a crime doing it. So I want to be real clear about the difference there. But owning it is no big deal. I know lots of kinky people who have incredibly interesting fantasies, and some of them they act on. But they always act on them in an ethical, legal, safe, sane, consensual way, for example. I see a lot of heads nodding from our kinky community in here. Oh yes, we do have kinky people in here, in case you didn't know it. So, ask and explore here at Oasis. This is a great place to explore and interact with people and understand what other people think. And it keeps, it's something you want to ask yourself. What keeps me from owning my desire? Do I still have some Duggar in me? And how can I find that out? So, I have a podcast called Sexuality Podcast. And it is an amazing honor I've had over the last year. We've just been going one full year, a few weeks ago. And I try to alternate, 1 week interviewing just a regular person about their journey, sexual journey out of religion, and then another week maybe an author or an expert or something like that. So I've interviewed a lot of people about their journey out of religion. And they've told me a lot of things, but I see real clear patterns in what they tell us. And if you've listened to many of the episodes, you probably see many of these patterns too. Almost everybody says, once I got out of religion, I liked my body better. There's no more body shaming or less body shaming. I'm much more comfortable in my body. I enjoy sex more. Almost everybody says that. And in our research we did on secular sexuality about 4 years ago, we got the same results from 14,560 atheists. Almost 98% of them, I don't remember the step, 98% of them said my sex life improved dramatically or it didn't improve at all. Only 2% said it got worse. So just leaving the religion is a big benefit to, 54% said their sex life improved dramatically by getting out of religion. I communicate better with my partner. That's universal. If they're in a relationship with somebody, they almost always say, me and my partner do much better communicating around our sex and sexuality. And I don't have that shame and that guilt burden any longer. And I don't have to censor myself to those I'm close to. I think, to me, one of the biggest ahas, when I went to an atheist convention in Minneapolis 10 years ago. It was my very first atheist convention, American Atheist Convention, I believe it was. And I was just amazed at how people talked there. There was almost very little censorship of the language. And I heard people talking about sex in public. I thought, wow, this is my kind of group. And that was before I really, came out publicly on the sex side of it, before I'd written, either one, God, Virus, or Sex and God. So how many of you enjoy the fact that you don't have to censor yourself here at Oasis? Wow, look at that. Look at that. Isn't that cool? It's just, okay, you just gave me a thrill. That is so fun. At least 90% of the hands went up. You can say fuck and shit, I don't give a damn. And nobody cares. Isn't that wonderful? Where can you do that in a Catholic church or a Baptist church? Especially not a Seventh-day Adventist church or a Mormon church. I celebrate my sexuality rather than I fear it. That's what I get from a lot of people that I talk to and evaluate. But I also hear it in my practice. I hear it all over the place. But you can hear it on the podcast. You can hear it in the voices. People are just celebrating their sexuality, and they've lost that fear that they had. Terror. Some people were terrorized, sometimes for 20, 30, 40 years of their own sexuality until they left religion. Now they feel free. And here's a plus for the rest of us. They don't judge us anymore, or they judge us much less. I have many people say, I used to think this and this and this about people who had tattoos or people who dressed certain ways, and now I don't. I just lost that when I became secular. A lot of people tell me I'm much closer to my partner, and I don't need to play games about my sexuality anymore. I can be who I want to be, and if my partners don't accept it, it's their problem, and not my problem if they can't accept who I am. Now, within reason, obviously the whole legal stuff comes into play, and boundaries, other people, all those things are important, the ethical side of it. But they're saying my sexuality with my partner is much better because I don't have to hide or play games. My partner does not shame or judge me. And there's several of my interviews where I've got married couples. And they're saying when we were married, we had these beliefs about each other. I knew he was using porn. I knew she used sex toys. And it was shameful. But when we got out of religion, okay, he's still using porn and she's not as mad, or a man at all, and she's still using sex toys, and he doesn't feel shame about that or shame her about it. I own my sexuality, and it makes me more confident in my own life. One of the things I found, I'll talk about that in just a second. I support my partner now where I used to judge my partner. Does that ring true for anybody in here where you had one belief about somebody and you changed it? And that's a tough one to raise your hand on, but I see a few people raising their hand. Okay, so sexual confidence. What I hear in the people I interview on my podcast are people feel confident about their sexuality. Something I observed many years ago as a clinical psychologist was when people feel sexually confident, it exudes everywhere. You can see it in the workplace. You can see it in the way they relate to their family and children. You can see it in the way they just walk down the street in the neighborhood sometimes. Sexual confidence is also very attractive. Now, I'm not talking about being an asshole and being, overbearing sexually. I'm just saying you are confident in who you are, regardless of what anybody else thinks or feels. You learn to assert your own boundaries and assert your own sexuality within your environment. So if you want to get better at this, and I don't think any of us do this alone, and you can do it alone if you want, I don't care, but you really need to be in relation to somebody else to learn about yourself. It's, until there were mirrors, the only way I could find out my hair was messed up was I'd have to go ask somebody. Logan, is my hair messed up? Then I'd have to believe her. But mirrors now give us the opportunity to see what our hair looks like. Well, that's what that's what relationships do for us. It gives us a mirror, and if you have several mirrors, you can start trusting those mirrors. It's hard to trust just one mirror. So you want to look at several mirrors, because some mirrors are more distorted than others. So I would encourage you to join a group, join a discuss group, join a book club that's looking at the kind of books that you want to read or you want to understand. Join a relationship group. There's several groups here in town. The Polyamorous Families is one of the groups. What's the one? Is Evan? I can't remember. There's another one here about loving more or something like that. And they're just groups, and there's book studies here. I think the Poly group has a book study once a month, don't they? Where's Maureen? They have a book study once a month. They're reading lots of books. But I think if you're involved in interaction with discussion, you're going to get a lot more information about yourself, and you can learn. Also, something that just blew my mind when I started the podcast. I had actually some of the people I've interviewed on the podcast told me this before they were on the podcast. They said, "Oh, I listened to your podcast with my husband, and we sat down. We had a 3-hour discussion after we listened to your podcast. 3 hours." One woman said, "My husband and I have never talked like that in our entire 25 years of marriage." 27 or something like that. So what I'm suggesting is listen to something, read a book together as a couple if you're partnered. Listen to the podcast. It will stimulate ideas and get you to ask questions and challenge the inner Duggar inside of you so that you can get rid of Josh Duggar and become whoever you are. So, face your fear. Where do you feel shame? Where do you feel guilt? Those are important components to become as a human being. All right. This is tough work, and it's pretty scary to do all this. But as you can see from just the stuff I showed you up here, or if you've experienced yourself leaving religion, it's really, really worth it. So thank you for your attention today. And if you are interested in either one of the books, all the proceeds go directly to Oasis today. Thank you.